I died in the year when I loved him the most. Pei Xian locked me in the basement for a whole day and night in order to please his white moonlight. Later, there was an electrical short circuit and a fire broke out. I was suffocated to death inside. In my last glance before dying, I saw a young man. He held a bench and frantically smashed the door lock, then rushed to my side. The fire burned his clothes, but he didn't care at all. Who was he? I can't remember. I only know that in the end, I died in his arms. After I died, my soul still lingered beside the young man. The fire was burning more and more fiercely, but he held me tightly and didn't move. I couldn't help pushing his body and roaring at him, "Run, are you going to wait for death here?" But I also knew that he couldn't hear the shouts of a ghost like me at all. It wasn't until the fire engine rumbled in and he was carried out by more than a dozen firefighters working together that I finally left that damned basement. The sun was shining brightly outside. It was a nice day. I saw Pei Xian. He was outside the villa, pacing nervously. He grabbed anyone he could and asked, "Has the girl in the basement been rescued?" Oh, he still didn't know that I was dead. You see, this boy whom I had loved for 10 years didn't even dare to rush in and save my life even when I was engulfed by the fire. My body was still held in the young man's arms. He didn't look at anyone. He walked straight to a black car, opened the car door, and placed me in the passenger seat. He even thoughtfully fastened the seat belt for my corpse. Then the car drove away suddenly and left the villa area. The young man fled in a hurry with the dead girl, just like a scene from a movie. We left the city. The scenery outside gradually changed to fields, villages, and then the beach. He came to the sea, an uninhabited and undeveloped beach. Finally, the car stopped. He carried me out of the car and walked slowly towards the depths of the sea. Gradually sinking into the water with me, he said, "Jiang He, I'm Lin Zhou. Do you remember me? Could it be a confession? Confession, confession." I opened my eyes and found myself standing in a high school classroom. Around me were my classmates who were 17 or 18 years old. A girl pushed me and said, "Jiang He, is that a love letter in your hand?" A dry piece of letter paper was crumpled and deformed in my hand. On the cover of the envelope were several neatly written words. For Pei Xian. I had traveled back to the day in high school when I confessed my love to Pei Xian. It was Friday afternoon, close to the end of school. In 5 minutes, Pei Xian would walk into the classroom. I handed this love letter to him right in front of everyone. What did he say at that time? "Oh," he said, "sorry, I don't want to be in a relationship right now." "No, that's not it." I shook my head. "You guys got it wrong." At this moment, Pei Xian walked into the classroom from outside. Someone shouted at him, "Pei Xian, Jiang He has something to talk to you about." There was a tone of eagerness to watch the excitement. I tore the letter paper in the middle into 2 halves and said calmly, "It's nothing, everyone was just joking." After that, I threw the torn letter paper into the trash can. Pei Xian stared at my face for a long time. He didn't say anything and went back to his seat. The onlookers around let out bored sighs. Alas, I thought there would be a good show. Let's go. Let's go. I was flipping through the book at my seat. School was about to end, and everyone was happily packing their school bags. But I always vaguely remembered that there was one more thing. Perhaps it wasn't important to me at that time, so it was hidden in the long river of my memory. It wasn't until the head teacher walked in that I suddenly came to my senses. It was him. When the classmates saw the head teacher coming in, there was an immediate commotion. They whispered and complained, "Wow! What time is it? School is about to end." The head teacher frowned. Our school was a private high school, which could be regarded as elite aristocratic education. The students here were either rich or powerful, and it was difficult for him to manage many of them. The head teacher beckoned outside. "Come in." He walked into the classroom from outside. Lin Zhou, I remembered. He was a transfer student who transferred to our school from another city in the 3rd year of high school. He always wore a washed-out school uniform, and his school bag was also old and with frayed seams, which was completely different from the luxurious and flashy style of the other students in the class. Probably for this reason, he seldom talked to others and was even often isolated. He always sat in the last row by himself, doing exercises in the workbook, but his grades were extremely good, among the best, and he was always in the top 3 of the grade. Especially in the comprehensive science subject, he almost got full marks every time. Lin Zhou bent slightly towards the class and introduced himself. "My name is Lin Zhou. the Zhouan, the water that bears the boat is the same that swallows it up. I transferred here from Xiucheng next door. The head teacher nodded. He pointed to a seat in the back row and said, "You can sit there." So Lin Zhou carried his school bag and walked through the whole classroom step by step and sat behind me. He slowly took out his textbooks and neatly arranged them on the desk. He was a bit nervous and also a bit ignorant, but it was okay. At the age of 17, we still had time and a chance to start over. After the head teacher left, the class became noisy again. Everyone turned around and curiously sized up Lin Zhou. Fu Sheng, a good-for-nothing hooligan in the class, came over and asked him, "Xiucheng, is that the coal city next door? My family also has business dealings there. What's your father's name? Maybe my parents know him." Lin Zhou pinched the tips of his fingers, looking a bit flustered. He stammered, "My father doesn't do business. He's just, could he be a coal miner in the mine?" Fu Sheng interrupted him and laughed. Many people here learn to fawn on the rich and powerful and look down on the poor at a young age. Many people thought it was interesting and came over to have a look, so Fu Sheng became even more complacent. He picked up Lin Zhou's book and sniffed it under his nose, saying, "There really is a smell of coal. Ha 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 ha." There were disgusting mocking laughs. I couldn't stand it anymore. I stood up, picked up the water in my cup, and splashed it on his head, saying, "Do you have a dog's nose?" Classmate Fu Sheng was splashed all over by me and looked at me angrily. He rolled up his sleeves and glared at me menacingly, saying, "Jiang He, are you courting death?" "Sorry, I've really died before." Perhaps Jiang He in high school was shy and introverted, but Jiang He who had lived for 28 years wasn't. I smiled and said, "Yeah, courting death." As a result, there wasn't a fight. Pei Xian came over. He frowned and looked at me, saying, "What's wrong with you today? Go home." Pei Xian was the class monitor, and the Pei family was the most powerful in the entire Nancheng. Of course, Fu Sheng wouldn't pick a fight with him, but when I saw him, I could only think of the towering fire. It was really uncomfortable to be choked to death by the smoke. I said, "We won't go home together anymore in the future. I'm going to stay after school to do exercises and prepare for the college entrance examination." Pei Xian snorted. He looked at me strangely and said, "Jiang He, what on earth has gotten into you? I'm going crazy because I don't want to see you anymore." I pointed at the classroom door and said, "Can you stop disturbing my study, monitor?" He Meng, the class flower of the next class, is still standing at the door waiting for you. Pei Xian, He Meng and I grew up together as childhood friends. Our parents had business dealings and often visited each other in our daily lives. I used to think that Pei Xian was very kind to me. He would call me Little He sister. In fact, he really only regarded me as a sister. The one he liked had always been He Meng. He Meng stood at the door and waved at us, saying, "Brother Pei, what are you talking to Jiang He about? Are you two leaving or not?" Pei Xian looked at me again. He tapped my desk with his index finger and said, "If you really can't learn physics, I can tutor you on the weekend." Then he picked up his school bag and walked towards He Meng. In the end, only Lin Zhou and I were left in the classroom. The wall clock in the classroom ticked. Behind me was the rustling sound of Lin Zhou's pen writing on the scratch paper. My impression of him was always that of a serious top student. But, Lin Zhou, what kind of person am I in your eyes? I turned around, put my hand on the back of the chair, and carefully sized him up. His eyebrows, eyes, and the corners of his mouth gradually merged with the man who held me in the sea of fire. He said, "Jiang He, I'm Lin Zhou. Do you remember me?" Probably because I was looking at him too intently, Lin Zhou sensed something was wrong. He raised his head, looked at me strangely, touched his chin with his hand, and asked cautiously, "Is there something on my face?" I shook my head and quickly said, "No. There isn't." It was really embarrassing. To break this awkward atmosphere, I casually took out a set of physics exercises from the desk drawer, flipped to a page, and placed it in front of Lin Zhou. "Can you explain this question to me?" When he saw the question, Lin Zhou relaxed immediately. He glanced at it and said, "Well, this question isn't actually very difficult. I can't do even the simple questions. My physics was extremely poor. The kind that seriously dragged down my overall score in every exam." He took out the scratch paper and quickly wrote down 2 formulas, saying, "It's like this, and then like this." Then he asked me, "Do you understand?" I let out a long, oh. He smiled and said, how about I help you lay a solid foundation? Lin Zhou probably also discovered my real level from my confused eyes. He closed the exercise book, took out the textbook, flipped to the beginning, and said softly, let's take it slow from chapter 1. I think Lin Zhou's tutoring level is better than that of my rigid and dogmatic high school physics teacher. It's also much better than Pei Xian's. That's right, in my previous life, I always followed Pei Xian around and bothered him with all kinds of wrong questions. Pei Xian, can you help me understand the theorem of kinetic energy? Pei Xian, why can't I ever do the last big math question? Pei Xian, so annoying. No wonder he always gave me a cold glance and said, are you a fool, Jiang He, you can't do anything. It wasn't until the school security office knocked on the door and stood at the classroom door shouting angrily at Lin Zhou and me, what are you two students doing here so late? Why haven't you gone home yet? Do I need to call your parents? That Lin Zhou and I realized it was almost 8 o'clock. The school was also going to lock the door. So we quickly packed our school bags, apologized, and ran out. We ran all the way to the school gate. A car honked its horn and stopped beside me. The driver rolled down the car window and called me, Xiao He. It was Uncle Zhang, the driver of our family. He saw that I hadn't gone home so late, so he specially drove to pick me up. Hurry up and get in the car. Your mother is still waiting for you to have dinner at home. Uncle Zhang glared at me, and his tone wasn't very friendly either. I quickly opened the car door and then looked back at Lin Zhou. Lin Zhou, it's so late. Do you need us to give you a ride home? No need. My home is very far away, in the western suburbs. It's not on the way. He showed that nervous expression again, along with a slightly stiff smile. Besides, there are still buses at this time. It's very convenient. Lin Zhou waved at me and ran towards the bus stop. The western suburbs were very far away. It would take more than an hour by bus. I had only been there once. It wasn't fully developed yet. There were old buildings and bungalows everywhere, and the garbage was piled on the ground. I shouted at him, Lin Zhou. He turned around. I asked him, do you know what my name is? Under the streetlight, his face turned slightly red. I said, my name is Jiang He, Jiang like ginger, and he likes seedlings. You have to remember it, although I traveled back in time. The knowledge of high school cultural courses didn't travel back with me at all. This was a very tragic thing. Plus, I was originally a mediocre student with average intelligence, so I had to lie on the desk and flip through the high school textbooks during the weekend. Almost every line of the textbooks was filled with notes. I'm not smart, but I've always been quite hardworking, just as I was deep in thought about the knowledge points. My phone rang, which startled me. It turned out to be He Shimeng. She sent me a photo on WeChat. It was a study room in the library, with several books and 2 cups of milk tea on the table. She sent a sad expression and said, Xiao He, Brother Pei came to study by himself on the weekend. I'm not a cultural course examinee. I'm so bored. Will you come? He Shimeng was a dance student. Pei Xian really was something. I never thought his way of thinking was so strange before. He actually asked someone on a date to the library. I simply replied with 2 words, no. She didn't reply anymore. I continued reading the book. As I was reading, my mind became as confused as a mess of paste. I really missed Lin Zhou explaining the questions to me that afternoon. It was so clear. I opened my phone, downloaded the newly updated class contact list from the class group files, found Lin Zhou's phone number, and dialed it. He answered quickly. I said, classmate Lin, Jiang He. He asked hesitantly. I smiled and said, I'm doing exercises, and I just thought of you. I hope I'm not disturbing you. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about which teachers in the class were the strictest, which ones were a bit snobbish, and some campus anecdotes and gossip stories that had been passed down for ages but Lin Zhou had never heard of. He kept echoing me and occasionally exclaimed exaggeratedly with me. It greatly satisfied my desire to express myself and tell stories. This young man was really gentle. But why couldn't I remember where exactly I had crossed paths with him before? We talked for a while before hanging up the phone. I casually clicked on the moments and flipped through it. I found that Pei Xian had surprisingly posted a status. I reviewed some physics knowledge points today and still gained a lot. The picture was a corner of the physics exercise book. There were a lot of likes and many classmates left messages. Monitor. Take me with you. Physics is really too difficult. Damn. Why is the top student studying so seriously? Pei Xian, if you gain any more knowledge, you'll get 200 points. Please stop studying. Before Lin Zhou transferred to our class, Pei Xian's grades had always been the first in our class, dozens of points higher than the second-place student. It wasn't until Lin Zhou came that his position began to be challenged. The test scores of the two of them were about the same. They took turns getting the first and second places in the quizzes. Other classmates always hoped to see a fierce competition between the two top students, but unfortunately, as far as I could remember, Pei Xian and Lin Zhou had probably said no more than 10 words to each other. The two of them really couldn't be considered familiar. I actually felt rather embarrassed about bothering Lin Zhou for so long, so in the evening, I rummaged through the kitchen for some ingredients and baked a box of cookies. I planned to give them to Lin Zhou as a gift. I used to tinker with such things quite often, would even take the cookies and cakes I experimented with to Pei Xian for a taste. However, in my previous life, once when I went to his office at the company, I accidentally saw the cookies I had given him in his drawer. He had only eaten one piece, the rest hadn't been touched at all, and some had even gone moldy. That's when I realized he actually didn't like the things I gave him. My mom heard the commotion and came downstairs to the kitchen to check on me. Again, wasting food. My mom frowned. Pei Xian doesn't like this at all. Can't you try something different? Who said it's for Pei Xian? It's for a new classmate. I put the cookies in a box, stood up straight, and replied loudly. I was really assertive. My mom looked at me in surprise, clicking her tongue and marveling at my change. During the break the next day, I turned around and placed the cookies on Lin Zhou's desk. He opened the box carefully, and his eyes lit up instantly. There was surprise, happiness, and a bit of bewilderment. He said, "Classmate Jiang He, you're the first person to make cookies for me." It felt so good. It felt incredibly good to have my hard work recognized. Just then, Pei Xian came out of the teacher's office, carrying a stack of test papers. He happened to pass by our row. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks, glanced at us, and asked out of the blue, "Did you make these cookies?" This guy was so stealthy that he startled both Lin Zhou and me. Pei Xian stared at the box of cookies for a long while. Then, he said strangely, "Jiang He, you once said you wouldn't give away the food you made to just anyone." I scratched my head. When I was chasing Pei Xian in high school, I did seem to say that. Pei Xian, no one except you will ever get to eat the desserts I make with my own hands. How infatuated I was back then. Why did he have to expose me? I lowered my head guiltily, not wanting to talk to him. Seeing that I wasn't talking to him, Pei Xian started chatting with Lin Zhou. "I heard you're pretty good at physics." He placed the test papers on the desk and asked, as if casually picking a topic. Lin Zhou shook his head and replied modestly, "Not really, just average." "Don't be so modest." Pei Xian took out one test paper from the stack and handed it to Lin Zhou. 98 points. That's really high. This was the test you took when you transferred, right? I just went to the office to get the last quiz papers and brought yours back by the way. I leaned over to take a look. Except for losing a few points on the last major question, he got full marks on the rest. Pei Xian pointed to the point where marks were deducted and said, "This is a question from the physics Olympiad. Think about it some more." In my previous life, Pei Xian had been receiving tutoring from an off-campus teacher to prepare for the physics Olympiad. Eventually, he won an award and got extra points in the college entrance examination. Seeing that I was listening intently, he suddenly flicked my forehead. "Jiang He, do you understand what we're talking about?" I glared at Pei Xian angrily. "Don't bully me too much. Do you really think I won't make progress?" He smiled, and there was even a touch of tenderness. "Why didn't you come to the library on the weekend? Didn't I say I'd explain questions to you?" This was the first time I'd heard him say something like this, but I shook my head. "I can ask Lin Zhou when I don't understand. He sits right behind me." Pei Xian's expression froze. He looked at me, then at Lin Zhou. Without saying a word, he walked away coldly, still carrying the stack of test papers. After taking 2 steps, he turned around and said indifferently to me, "Jiang He, you have to come to Shermang's celebration party next Saturday, right?" Shermang's celebration party was the turning point that changed everything. Shermang was an art student. The requirements for cultural courses were not very high. As long as she met the cut-off score in the art entrance examination, she could almost get into a school. In my previous life, she had an outstanding performance. Several good dance schools extended offers to her. It was truly a great joy. Sherman's father hosted a banquet at a 5-star hotel. He also gave her 2 days off specifically, allowing her to invite friends to have fun outside. The prerequisite was that they weren't allowed to stay out overnight. It wasn't surprising that her father had such a requirement. She usually went out a lot and had friends from all walks of life. Sherman booked a luxury suite at a KTV. I went there too. There were both classmates from our school and some friends from her off-campus art class. It was noisy and full of excitement. Pei Xian and Sherman were surrounded in the middle. The two of them were egged on to have a duet. Nearly at dawn, my mom called me on a video call. Sherman happened to be beside me and saw the caller ID. She said, "My mom said she went shopping with your mom today. She's probably still playing mahjong at your place. My phone is turned off. Don't answer the call. She'll definitely use you to drag me back." But I was a well-behaved girl. In the end, I still answered the call. Sure enough, 2 people appeared on the other end, my mom and Sherman's mom. Sherman's mom had an extremely loud voice. "It's so noisy there, Sherman. Don't you see what time it is? Are you coming home or not? Tell me where you are. I'll send the Jiang family's driver to pick you up." Sherman stared wide-eyed and complained, "Mom, aren't you annoying? After I finish the exam, can't you just let me play outside for one night? Am I going to lose an arm or a leg?" Both of them were stubborn. They argued for a long time. Finally, Sherman's mom said, "If you don't come home tonight, you won't get your pocket money next month." Sherman was a rich girl at school, getting 50,000 yuan in pocket money every month. This sentence immediately silenced Sherman. She hung up the phone cursing, announcing that her carefree evening had come to a complete end. Later, Pei Xian accompanied us downstairs and waited with us in the lobby for Uncle Zhang to drive over. During this time, Sherman didn't say a word to Pei Xian. She was a bit angry. While talking to her mother on the phone, she had been signaling to Pei Xian, hoping that he would step in and say a few words for her. Even something like, "Auntie, don't worry. I'll take care of Sherman tonight," would have been fine. Sherman's mom liked Pei Xian a lot and even had the intention of matching them up. If Pei Xian had spoken up, her mom might really have agreed to Sherman's request, but that guy was completely cold that night, indifferent to Sherman's pleas. As a result, Sherman couldn't win against her mom. In the end, she had to go home with me. "It's all your fault." She stamped her feet and gritted her teeth. "Neither of you is any good. You really ruined the mood." On the way back that night, there was a car accident. Afterward, the traffic police determined that Uncle Zhang, the driver of our family, was driving under the influence and was fully responsible. Sherman and I stayed in the hospital for half a month. She was more seriously injured than I was. Her leg ligaments were damaged, and she couldn't dance for several years. Sherman's mom cried heart-brokenly beside her hospital bed. She grabbed Uncle Zhang and said she must make him pay with his life. Uncle Zhang was held legally accountable later and also compensated, but what was the use? The He family was least short of money. This was a turning point. If that car accident hadn't happened, Sherman would have stayed in the country, and the 3 of us would still be getting along as we did in high school. A few years later, Pei Xian might have gotten together with Sherman. I probably would have been sad, but after crying my heart out, I would still sincerely wish them well and then go on to find my own path in life. However, that car accident changed everything. Sherman gave up on the dance academy and went abroad to study at an art school. Pei Xian and I went to the same city for college. Occasionally, we would meet. He knew I had a crush on him, and the most frequent thing he said was, "Jiang He, do you think you treat Sherman fairly?" Both of us were burdened with a sense of guilt. He would fly across half of China to buy almond cookies from Macau for Sherman and mail them abroad. He would also stay up late to set an alarm toadicats for Jay Chou's concert and accompany her to the concert when she said she wanted to see it. As for gifts on festivals, birthdays, and anniversaries every year, he never missed any. Later, after living abroad for several years, Sherman returned to the country. Pei Xian got in touch with our old friends and threw a celebration party for her. It was already late at night. After Sherman finished singing a song, she held the microphone and suddenly said to me, "Jiang He, now that you've graduated for so many years, does your mom still care whether you come home at night?" At that moment, the air suddenly turned deathly silent. I knew she had never actually forgiven me. Pei Xian called her helplessly. Shermang, brother Pei, don't interrupt me. Shermang was drunk, and her tone became domineering. Isn't classmate Jiang He a well-behaved girl anyway? You don't fit in with us. You'd probably be happier if we locked you in a small room. She clung to Pei Xian's arm, speaking in a coquettish voice. I was speechless. I wanted to argue, but I always felt like I owed her something. Pei Xian sighed. He looked at me, then took out the keys and, together with Shermang, locked me in the basement. Shermang patted the basement door and shouted with a smile, Jiang He. I'll open the door for you after the party. I didn't know why her party lasted so long. I only knew that a fire broke out. After traveling back in time, I wasn't going to let the tragedy of my previous life happen again. I knew it was almost impossible to stop Shermang from celebrating her exam success, so I chose not to attend the party myself. If I didn't go, Uncle Zhang, the driver, wouldn't drive to pick us up. On Saturday night, Pei Xian called me. When are you coming? It was so noisy on the other end that I could barely hear him. I'm not going, I'm doing exercises, I said. Suit yourself. After a moment of silence, Pei Xian replied coldly. I hung up the phone, thinking that now, my reputation as a hard-working bookworm was surely well spread. Nearly at dawn, I went downstairs to check. Uncle Zhang was on a video call with his old army comrades. He was drinking, eating, and chatting. When he saw me, he waved. Shao He, why aren't you sleeping yet? I opened my mouth, but hesitated. Finally, I said, Uncle Zhang, you're getting old, you should drink less from now on. In the living room, several women were playing mahjong with great enthusiasm. Shermang's mom had just won a hand. She was really lucky. She looked at her watch and suddenly remembered something. Oh, Shermang went out to play tonight. I wonder if she's home yet. I should call her. But her phone was turned off. She called again, but still couldn't get through. The friend next to her persuaded her, Sister, it's your turn to be the dealer. You're not going to run away after winning, are you? That's not right. Shermang's mom didn't feel right about making more calls. She shuffled the cards and smiled. What are you talking about? Do you think I'd renege? I lay on the bed in my bedroom, watching the time on the wall clock pass by bit by bit. It was quiet outside. It seemed like an extremely ordinary night. I slowly drifted off to sleep. The next day, my mom woke me up. Jiang He, come down for breakfast. It was only 8 o'clock. I groggily took my phone from the bedside and started scrolling through moments. A classmate posted a status. Don't the school beauty and the top student make a good match? The photo was of Pei Xian and Shermang. Both of them were leaning on the sofa, asleep with their eyes closed. Shermang's head was gently resting on Pei Xian's shoulder. Presumably, the party had lasted too long, and everyone was tired in the end. Someone sensed some gossip and took a photo of them and even posted it online. There were many teasing comments below. I thought there was something going on between these two for a long time, the top-tier couple at our school. When I saw the photo, I woke up instantly. I sat up abruptly in bed. The car accident really hadn't happened. Shermang hadn't left the celebration party. Everything was fine. I was so excited that I quickly liked the post. I also commented, this is really nice. Not long after, when I refreshed the page, the status was gone. Pei Xian actually called me. Jiang he said out of the blue, everyone was making such a ruckus last night. I went to sleep in the middle and didn't join in the fun later. Oh, why was he telling me this? He smiled. I thought you'd go. If I'd known you weren't going, I wouldn't have gone either. I rubbed my nose, not knowing how to respond. We were silent for a while. I said, if there's nothing else, I'm going to have breakfast. He hummed, okay, see you at school tomorrow. Although the photo in moments was deleted, rumors spread really fast, especially since quite a few classmates had attended Shermang's party. When I went to school on Monday, I could sense the excitement of everyone secretly gossiping, but I didn't get involved, because in a few days, the results of the monthly exam would be out. This was the first relatively important exam Lin Zhou had taken since transferring to our school. When the head teacher announced the rankings, he deliberately created some suspense. This time, there's a dark horse in our class. Good, competition drives progress. He paused. Lin Zhou, first in the grade. The class erupted. This was the first time Pei Xian, who had always been first in the class, had been surpassed. Lin Zhou, The transfer student Lin Zhou, he doesn't even talk to us. The college entrance examination is coming up, and now there's another top student. Although I already knew Lin Zhou's capabilities, it didn't stop me from being excited. I turned around, excitedly reaching out to ruffle Lin Zhou's hair. Lin Zhou, you're really amazing. I messed up Lin Zhou's hair. He wasn't angry at all. He just smiled gently. My deskmate probably couldn't stand it and nudged me with her elbow. Jiang He, keep your voice down, she winked at me. Don't you see the monitor is unhappy? I followed my deskmate's gaze. Pei Xian was sitting by the wall, looking back at Lin Zhou and me fooling around. His lips were pressed into a thin line, his eyes were cold, and he was almost like a frozen statue. I shuddered. I realized I was really lacking in empathy. Pei Xian had been the top student in the grade for almost 3 years. Suddenly getting second place would be hard for anyone to take. Here I was, beaming with joy. Wasn't I rubbing salt in his wounds? I coughed twice. I toned it down a bit. After a long while, Pei Xian finally looked away from me. I let out a huge sigh of relief. Thanks to Lin Zhou's tutoring, my grades have improved significantly. So now, every Friday after school, I willingly stay with him for 2 more hours of self-study, taking advantage of the top student's tutoring. Surprisingly, Pei Xian also stays. As soon as the school bell rings, he Shimeng runs to the door of our class. Brother Pei. Let's go home, she waves to Pei Xian as she did before. Pei Xian doesn't go out, nor does he pack his school bag. He says to He Shimeng from his seat, you go back first from now on, I'll stay for a while to study before leaving. As soon as he says this, the classmates who haven't left all turn around to look. Monitor, is it really necessary? You've already got a 60-point reduction for admission. Why are you still so serious? Are you really trying to compete us to death? Because of winning an award in the Olympiad, Pei Xian's target university directly gave him a 60-point reduction for admission. Even if he doesn't perform up to his usual level in the exam, he definitely won't fall below the admission minimum passing score of his dream school. Pei Xian ignores them. After everyone leaves, he directly holds his books and sits next to my seat. I'm confused. Pei Xian answers factly, it's closer to Lin Zhou from your seat. It's convenient for us two to discuss questions. Well, I'm left speechless. Should I step aside and make room for you 2 top students? Before I can say anything, Pei Xian really takes out a question and starts communicating with Lin Zhou. Classmate Lin, do you have any simple way to solve this problem? I think my approach is too complicated. I take a look and find that it's exactly a question I got wrong in the exam. So I don't want to drive Pei Xian away anymore. I obediently keep my mouth shut and listen to the 2 geniuses discussing academic experience back and forth. A small fry, benefit from their discussion. After an entire evening of self-study, I feel like all my brain cells are being elevated. Pei Xian and Lin Zhou often have different problem-solving ideas, so when their ideas collide, they often bring new inspiration. It's almost 8 o'clock when Pei Xian takes out a book and taps my head. Jiang He, it's time to go home. Only then do I come to my senses, still a bit dazed. Okay, let's go. Since I told my mom that I would study at school for a while after school on Fridays, she asked Uncle Zhang to pick me up 2 hours later. Lin Zhou still insists on taking the bus home and never lets me give him a ride. And now Pei Xian is added to the mix. He's a rich second generation from a wealthy family. Yet his family didn't send a car to pick him up either. Pei Xian rubs his nose and looks at me shamelessly. Ask Uncle Zhang to drop me off at home. Didn't our families take turns sending cars to pick us up after school when the 3 of us were together? I give him a blank look. Monitor Pei, can't you learn from classmate Lin and take the bus home, making your contribution to energy conservation and emission reduction? Pei Xian scorns my fallacy. Or should I call your mom and tell her you left me at the school gate at night? Not caring whether I live or die, I'm really fed up with him. The 2 of us sit in the back row. Uncle Zhang drives quietly in the front. For a moment, I feel that I have nothing to say to Pei Xian. The street scenes of the city pass by in reverse outside the car window. Suddenly, Pei Xian asks me, Jiang He, there are only a few months left until the college entrance examination. Have you decided which school to apply to? This question reminds me. It's time to think about my college applications. I want to go to the south and see the sea. But in my previous life, because Pei Xian chose a university in the north, I followed him there like a fool. It's not that the city was bad, but it just wasn't suitable for me. Seeing that I don't say anything, Pei Xian says softly, if you've decided, tell me. He takes a deep breath, as if making a decision, and looks at me. I want to study in the same city as you. I'm taken aback. Hasn't your target university already been decided? I ask in return. It's a top-tier prestigious school, and he got a reduction for admission. More importantly, there are a lot of connections of the Pei family at that school. Most of the Pei family's friends and relatives graduated from there. There's really no reason for him to change his target university now. He shakes his head. He doesn't answer my question, just repeating, Jiang He, we should be in the same city in the future. I'm not interested in being in the same city as Pei Xian. At night, I huddle under the covers and send a WeChat message to Lin Zhou. Classmate Lin, have you decided which university to apply to? After sending it, I think my question is meaningless. With Lin Zhou's grades, he can get into any school he wants. Lin Zhou replies quickly, not yet. What about you? I want to go to a warm, humid place where I can see the sea. I type while imagining, coincidentally, me too. This guy is clearly copying me. In my previous life, although I studied hard in high school, to a large extent, it was to be in the same place as Pei Xian. This time, I want to work hard for myself. In the second semester of senior high school, the atmosphere in the class gradually becomes more serious. The countdown to the college entrance examination weighs on everyone's head. Even our private high school can't avoid this. The principal specially organized a mobilization meeting before the college entrance examination, inviting the top-performing students from the whole school to give speeches on stage about their learning and exam experiences. Not surprisingly, as typical top students, Pei Xian and Lin Zhou were both selected as student representatives. I remember this mobilization meeting was extremely boring. In my previous life, I tried hard to stay until Pei Xian's turn to speak. After listening to his articulate speech, I couldn't bear to listen to the rest of the students' speeches. Finally, I secretly slipped out of the auditorium and went for a walk on the playground. I have no impression of Lin Zhou's speech at all. Maybe it was at the end, and I missed it. Thinking about it, it's a bit of a pity. Fortunately, I have a chance to start over. This time, I'm especially attentive, waiting for Lin Zhou to take the stage. However, even after Pei Xian finished speaking and most of the other students had spoken, I still didn't see Lin Zhou's figure. Just then, the organizer from the student union passed by. I grabbed their arm and asked, classmate, where's Lin Zhou from our class? Why hasn't he taken the stage? I haven't seen him either. The person frowned, and their tone wasn't very good. I called him, but he didn't answer. The order of appearance was already arranged, and he just messed it up. What's going on? Only then did I realize that something might have happened. I stood up suddenly and ran out of the auditorium. Where could he be? I took out my phone and called Lin Zhou. Just as the student union person said, I made several calls, and all of them showed that no one answered. The school is so big, I'm like a headless fly, running around aimlessly between the teaching buildings. I kept pressing Lin Zhou's phone number, which was useless, while trying to comfort myself. He's not a primary school student, he must be okay. It wasn't until I ran to the playground that, all of a sudden, memories flooded into my mind. I remembered, in my previous life, after listening to Pei Xian's speech, I secretly slipped out of the auditorium for a walk. When I walked to the gymnasium, I heard strange noises and shouts, driven by curiosity. I walked to the window and saw several classmates from our class surrounding a young man, punching and kicking him non-stop. They were swearing dirty words. I don't know why, but I was filled with a sense of justice at that time. I pushed the door open directly. I pulled the young man out of the group. If you bully him again, I'll tell the teacher. I even left such a menacing sentence. Now, looking back, that person was Lin Zhou. I ran as fast as I could. I rushed all the way to the gymnasium and pushed the door open with a bang. The scene in front of me was exactly the same as in my previous life. Lin Zhou was surrounded in the middle, and next to him were several hooligans from our class. Fu Sheng was among them. Isn't your family a coal mining family? Just because you study well, you think you're something special. You wanted to give a speech on stage. I won't let you go. I just hate these self-important good students. what kind of ability do they have? After getting along with Lin Zhou for a long time, I realized that, in fact, his living environment in the class was worse than I had imagined. In a high school like ours, students especially like to form small groups, and Lin Zhou, with his gentle personality, transferred to our school midway. As a top student from a poor family, he didn't belong to any group, so he was often excluded, even bullied. In this world, he has me, a friend, by his side. I can't imagine how lonely his life was in my previous life. Perhaps it was precisely because of this situation that he was extremely sensitive to even the slightest bit of kindness. Maybe I just pulled him out of Fu Xing's group casually, but it made him remember me for so long. I'm not afraid of these rich second generations like Fu Sheng. When they saw me, they stopped me. Jiang He, what are you doing? Rescuing the beauty like a hero. This was different from the previous plot, especially since I might have come at the wrong time. The mobilization meeting was over, and the students were walking this way. Some of them noticed the commotion here and pushed the door to peek in. What? I don't remember there being such a big scene last time. Seeing the onlookers, Fu Xing became even more excited. Jiang He, I've noticed for a long time that there's something going on between you two. Are you two having an affair? If it were an ordinary classmate today, I wouldn't have bullied Lin Zhou so much, but it's you, well. If you admit that you like him, I'll apologize. Our school loves gossip. The onlookers made a uniform, sound. Who are they? It's Jiang He from class 4 and the top student in our grade. Lin Zhou stood up and tugged at my hand. His face was pale. Jiang he smiled. Forget it, don't put yourself in a difficult position. There are so many classmates here. What can he do to me? Although he said so. But I can't stand being provoked, so what if I like Lin Zhou? I stuck out my neck and said loudly, is having a crush against the law, which school rule in our school prohibits dating. It's not that difficult to be straightforward. Actually, everyone probably didn't expect me to admit it so readily. For a moment, no one said a word. There wasn't even any cheering from those watching the show. It was Fu Sheng who stammered and broke the silence first. Jiang He, you're really a heroic woman. What are you doing, inciting a mob? At this time, a sudden voice came from behind the crowd. The college entrance examination hasn't even happened yet. Do you all want to get a disciplinary record? The crowd automatically made way. The person who came looked familiar. I thought about it. It seemed to be the president of the student union. The president pointed at Fu Sheng and his gang. And his tone was stern. You're all about to graduate, yet you're still bullying schoolmates. Have you read the school rules? Don't you know that campus bullying is strictly prohibited in our school? Prohibiting campus bullying is an important rule in our school's campus code, although in reality, there are countless cases of secretly excluding disadvantaged classmates, but none of them had reached the school authorities. This time, Fu Sheng was going to be made an example of. The president pointed at them one by one. You, and you, all come with me to the dean's office. After calling out their names, he turned back and said to the person behind him, Pei Xian, I'll go and tell the teacher about the situation first. Are you coming? Only then did I realize that Pei Xian had come with the president of the student union. He was standing in the shadows just now, and I didn't notice him. Pei Xian shook his head and suddenly pointed at Lin Zhou. Let classmate Lin go too. After all, he's the victim. He can clarify the situation. The president nodded and waved his hand, taking everyone away. Fu Xing shouted, help, I don't want to see the dean. That's not up to you. The president patted his head. Seeing that the main characters had left, the onlookers knew the show was over and scattered in a hurry. I originally wanted to go with Lin Zhou and wait for him outside the office, but just as I walked a few steps, someone suddenly grabbed my wrist. Pei Xian looked at me, his eyes deep. Jiang He, come with me. Only then did I notice that his face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and his lips were trembling slightly, as if suppressing some surging emotions. What for? I asked in a low voice. He grabbed me, leaving me no room to refuse, and pushed me directly into a corner. Pei Xian is much taller than me. At this moment, he's extremely close to me, and the sense of oppression is overwhelming. Jiang He. He frowned, trying to calm his voice. I can understand that you wanted to help Lin Zhou today, but you could have called the teacher or me. You didn't really have to use this method. Oh, I understand. He thought that my confession of liking Lin Zhou today was just a temporary measure for my willingness to help others. I smiled. Pei Xian, you're wrong, I'm not helping a classmate out of kindness. I really like Lin Zhou. Hearing me say this, Pei Xian seemed to be caught off guard. He was stunned and didn't say a word. After a long while, he showed a pained, flustered, and somewhat pitiful expression. Suddenly, he took out a love letter torn into several pieces from his pocket, held it carefully in his hand, and showed it to me. Jiang He, you're lying to me, right? What did I do wrong? You can't like Lin Zhou. If you like Lin Zhou, how could you have written such a letter to me? This was the love letter I wrote to Pei Xian. But I had torn it up and thrown it into the trash. I don't know why it was in Pei Xian's hands. I looked at him strangely. Pei Xian forced a bitter smile and admitted without hesitation, yes, I picked it out of the trash. I admit that I wasn't sure how much I liked you at that time, and I was also worried that dating in senior high school would affect my studies, but I really never thought that, Jiang He, you would like someone else. Seeing the love letter, I actually felt relieved. It might not be a bad thing for my secret crush on Pei Xian to end like this. I snatched the letter from his hand, tore it into even smaller pieces, then opened the window behind me and threw it out casually. The shredded paper fluttered away in the wind and could never be put back together. Pei Xian's face changed. He rushed to the window immediately, gripping the window frame with both hands, leaning half of his body out of the window. He said through gritted teeth, Jiang He, you, Pei Xian. From the moment I threw away the love letter, you should have known that I don't like you anymore. From now on, don't come to me unless it's something important. As you said, we're all going to take the college entrance examination and focus on our studies, right? The next day, as soon as I entered the classroom, I felt that all my classmates were looking at me. I remained calm, without blushing or getting flustered. I sat at my desk, opened my book, and started reading. However, it was already morning self-study. Why hadn't Lin Zhou arrived yet? I patted my deskmate's hand and asked her, where's Lin Zhou? My deskmate gave me a teasing look. You don't know, because of the scene you caused yesterday, Fu Sheng was singled out by the school as a typical case of bullying. He has to make a public self-criticism during this morning's self-study. As for Lin Zhou, he's probably dealing with this matter at the teacher's office right now, just as we were talking. The loudspeaker in the class blared. It was the dean's voice. A very serious bullying incident occurred in our school this time. It had a really bad influence. It's necessary for the leading students involved to make a profound self-criticism. Fu Sheng and his accomplices looked like eggplants beaten by frost. They had completely lost their usual arrogance. One by one, they apologized in a muffled voice. The classmates in the class all lowered their heads and snickered. I couldn't hold it in either and burst out laughing. The dean asked Lin Zhou whether he accepted the apologies from these people. Lin Zhou said softly, actually, I've never paid attention to them. They were simply not on the same level as him, even if they were arrogant and acting up. So what? I couldn't help but want to applaud him under the desk. But the next second, he suddenly brought me up. Jiang He, I always think that I should be the one to confess. I like you. I was stunned. My deskmate spat out a mouthful of water. She stared at me with wide eyes. You two are really something, flirting right in front of all the teachers and students in our school. As a result, both Lin Zhou and I had to hand in a self-criticism, but we could now hold hands openly on campus. Although puppy love might seem to be bad for studies, my boyfriend was the top student in the grade. How could I not make good use of such a huge advantage, thanks to Lin Zhou's company and explanations? Those difficult science problems seemed to come alive. The entire second semester of senior high school no longer seemed so tough. Time flew by. Suddenly, I realized that I hadn't paid attention to Pei Xian for a long time. He no longer stayed for self-study on Friday afternoons. Even when he ran into Lin Zhou and me on campus, he would lower his eyes and walk past quickly. It seemed that he was truly putting my words into practice and no longer disturbing me. The moment the college entrance examination results were released, I was in an internet cafe, teaching Lin Zhou how to clear the minions. The class group exploded all of a sudden. Someone sent a message, help, the college entrance examination results are out. Lin Zhou and I ditched our in-game teammates without hesitation, logged off immediately. and picked up our phones to enter our admission ticket numbers. My results came out quickly. I scored 30 to 40 points higher than my usual level. It was an outstanding performance. I screamed with excitement, then turned my head to look at the screen of Lin Zhou's phone. There was a problem with his result. It seemed to be quite serious. The query page showed 0 points. My hands were shaking. I asked him in a low voice, "How is that possible? Did you forget to write your name or fill in the wrong admission ticket number?" Lin Zhou shook his head. His finger slowly moved towards a line of small characters at the bottom of the screen. "Your rank is among the top 50 in the province. Please check the specific situation within the next few days." I screamed and hugged Lin Zhou. The guy next to us who was playing games took off his headphones and looked at us in confusion. "How many kills did you get? Why are you so excited?" I blushed and lowered my voice. "Classmate Lin, which school do you plan to apply to?" Lin Zhou smiled and ruffled my hair. "I'll discuss it with you later." A famous university in the south offered Lin Zhou a full scholarship and allowed him to choose any major he wanted. I was admitted to a nearby normal university. Everything seemed to be on the right track as planned, except for Pei Xian. A few days before the deadline for filling out college applications, I suddenly received a call from Pei Xian's father. "Jiang He, can you do uncle a favor? Persuade Pei Xian to apply to University A as originally planned." University A was the target school that had offered Pei Xian a 60-point reduction for admission. Only then did I learn that Pei Xian had performed poorly in the exam. His results were not particularly ideal. And he didn't reach the admission for the business programs at the top universities in the country, but with the 60-point reduction from University A, he could still go there as originally planned. To be honest, I was quite confused about this call from Pei Xian's father. First, facing such a situation, University A was one of the top universities in the country. What was Pei Xian hesitating about? I really couldn't understand. Second, as an outsider, what could I possibly persuade him to do? However, since Pei Xian's father was an elder, it was hard for me to refuse his request, so after hanging up the phone, I dialed Pei Xian's number. It rang for a long time before he answered. After hesitating for a while, I asked, "Pei Xian, haven't you decided which school to apply to yet?" Pei Xian's voice sounded a bit tired. "No." For a moment, I felt frustrated with him. "Have you lost your mind, Monitor Pei? What are you thinking? If you don't go to University A, where else would you go? Given your abilities, wouldn't it be a pity to go to an ordinary key university?" I wasn't sure whether my words were too harsh. For a while, Pei Xian didn't answer me. After a long time, he said slowly, "Jiang He, I'm afraid that if I'm too far away from you, you'll forget about me." "Jiang He, I want to study in the same city as you." So, that's really what he was thinking. But Pei Xian, there was no need, really no need. I said in a cold tone, "Pei Xian, if you do this, I'll look down on you. Do you want us to stop being even ordinary friends?" Pei Xian went to University A. He Shermang passed the cultural course exams smoothly and was admitted to a dance academy in the same northern city. Lin Zhou and I were admitted to universities in the south. Everything ended perfectly. There was no car accident, no pain, and no fire later on. The relationship between our three families remained very good. We had several celebration banquets for our college admissions in a row. Our parents even said they would send us to the airport together to see us off for college. In the airport waiting hall, Lin Zhou and I were on the same flight, while Pei Xian and He Shermang were on another flight. One was heading south, and the other was going north. Finally, we said goodbye at the boarding gate. I held Lin Zhou's arm and handed a backpack to him. He Shermang also tried to touch Pei Xian's hand, but he subtly moved aside. Looking cold and distant, he looked at me, opened his mouth, but in the end, said nothing. I waved to them, "Goodbye, maybe we won't see each other again for a very long time." Hashtag extra chapter. Pei Xian, the autopsy report is out. The cause of death was chemical asphyxiation. Before her death, the victim inhaled excessive amounts of carbon monoxide, soot, and toxic gases. The entire process was extremely painful. All right, stop with this useless talk. He Jiqiang waved his hand impatiently, interrupting the police officer's explanation. "The person is already dead. This is just an ordinary accident. Figure out how to close the case. Was it really just an accident?" He Shermang huddled in her father's arms, sobbing non-stop, "Dad, I'm so scared, so scared." He Jiqiang, a small-time hooligan who collected protection money on the streets as a teenager, had grown his influence over the years. He became a business tycoon with connections in both the legal and illegal worlds. He didn't care at all about such a small-scale case. Even though the victim was his daughter's childhood friend, of course, I was no better. I sat in the police station, saying not a word. In fact, even if He Jiqiang hadn't come today, it would have been difficult for the police to convict He Shimeng and me. There were no surveillance cameras in the villa in the suburbs, so, apart from He Shimeng and me, no one else had witnessed us locking Jiang He in the basement. You can kill someone without being punished, Pei Xian. I looked at my hands and suddenly felt a nauseating dizziness. It was as if my hands were stained with blood. Who is he? I pointed to the person in the photo and asked. The two bodies retrieved by the rescue team were lying on the beach, even though they had been soaked in seawater and were barely recognizable. The man's hands were still tightly holding Jiang He in his embrace. I felt a stifling sense of pent-up anger. The police officer flipped through his notebook. Lin Zhou, an associate professor at a well-known university in this city. What a pity. It must be a case of lover's suicide. Suicide for love. Nonsense. I became increasingly irritated and angrily interrupted the young police officer. After that, I left the police station without looking back. I walked to the parking lot. Just as I opened the car door, He Shimeng caught up with me from behind. Brother Pei, she tugged at my sleeve. Her eyes were still red. Can I stay at your place for a few days? I'm scared. I shook her off. I found her extremely annoying. He Shimeng, why didn't we think about Jiang He being scared when we locked her in the basement? He Shimeng was pushed away by me and stood there dumbfounded. I drove aimlessly through the city at night. Eventually, I arrived in front of Jiang He's high school home. In recent years, the Jiang family's business hadn't been doing well. Jiang He's father passed away unexpectedly while she was in college. Her mother, overwhelmed by stress and grief, had a recurrence of her old illness and went abroad for convalescence not long after. Several relatives of the Jiang family were no good either. They took advantage of the situation, seized control of the board of directors, and even snatched away the shares Jiang He held. At that time, in order to treat her mother's illness, Jiang He had no choice but to sell the villa where she had lived for many years. Somehow, I bought it. Now, Uncle Zhang was in charge of looking after the villa. He had been released from prison. He was getting old, with gray hair, and no longer had the somewhat overbearing demeanor he had 10 years ago. Who's there, Mr. Pei? What made you think of coming here? Uncle Zhang opened the door. Seeing me, he wore a surprised expression. I let out a soft, not knowing how to answer his question. Uncle Zhang took the coat from my hand, hung it on the wall, and followed me. Where's Xiao He? Didn't she come back? I stopped in my tracks. Uncle Zhang, she's not coming back. This was the first time I had come to stay in this villa since I bought it. I went up to the second floor and entered Jiang He's bedroom. In high school, Jiang He Shimeng, and I had a very good relationship. During vacations and festivals, the three of us often had gatherings at each other's homes. Later, He Shimeng went abroad. Jiang He and I went to college in the north. She didn't come back here very often. The bedroom looked almost the same as it had in high school. There were blue bed sheets and quilts, and the curtains were printed with Winnie the Pooh on the bookshelf. There were rows of books. Besides thick dictionaries and various workbooks, the majority were mystery and detective novels. Looking at all this, I suddenly realized that I had never really known much about Jiang He. I didn't know what color she liked, what cartoons she liked, or what books she liked to read. I even knew that He Shimeng liked pink, but I had been stingy with getting to know Jiang He. It was as if just because she was always by my side, I could always see her whenever I looked back. What a despicable and cowardly thought. I sat at Jiang He's desk. There was a small drawer under the desk. I opened it casually. Inside were some notebooks, documents, and the like. A high school graduation photo was in it. I took it out gently. Jiang He and I were standing together in the middle row. At that time, we were both young and green. Jiang He squinted her eyes and smiled slightly in the sunlight. I moved my finger next to Jiang He's face and gently stroked it. Suddenly, I felt that the age of 17 was never going to come back. At this time, a gentle breeze blew, and a letter fell out of the drawer. The letter was folded into 3 parts, and on the top were 3 words, for Pei Xian. For me, it was as if a string in my memory had been plucked. I unfolded the letter. It was the love letter Jiang he gave me in our senior year of high school. Pei Xian, you don't know, but actually, I've liked you for a long time. I know my grades are just average, but I'll work hard to go to the same university as you. Can you not be annoyed with me when I ask you questions next time? Do you like me? Looking at these lines, I suddenly felt extremely sad. How had I replied to her at that time? I said, Jiang He, I don't want to be in a relationship right now. The courses in senior year were intense, and I didn't want to be distracted, but more importantly, I always felt that Jiang He would never, ever leave me, so I could take her for granted and not cherish her. Just thinking about this, thinking that it was my arrogance and pride that had pushed Jiang He into hell, that had killed the person who was most important to me. Regret and guilt were like invisible hands, tightly gripping my heart, making it hard for me to breathe. I squatted down in distress. I held the love letter tightly in my hand. Jiang He, I'm sorry to you. I owe you my life. That night, I slept in Jiang He's bed. Strangely, although Jiang He hadn't come back for several years, I always felt as if her scent still lingered here. During this period, I stayed in the Jiang family's villa. Seeing that I seemed to plan to stay for a long time, Uncle Zhang wanted to tidy up the master bedroom for me. I told him not to bother, that I was fine in Jiang He's room. He looked at me, shook his head, and said nothing. During the day, I drove to the company to work and attend meetings. Then, at around 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, I would return to the Jiang family's villa. After coming back, I often sat on Jiang He's bed and read the books she had left behind. Occasionally, I would see Jiang He. She would stand next to me, point to a certain line in the book, and say to me, Pei Xian, do you know who the murderer is? I'm not going to tell you. When I looked up again, she would disappear. I knew I was having hallucinations. I didn't go to the hospital to see a doctor. If being sick meant I could see Jiang He, it wasn't so bad. Jiqiang suddenly invited me out for a meal at his private club. Shimeng was also there. He lit a cigar and threw a real estate cooperation and development agreement in front of me, smiling. Pei Xian, among the younger generation, I think most highly of you. What do you think? Are you interested in developing the land in the western suburbs together? The western suburbs, a slum-like area, dirty, chaotic, and in a poor state. The government had long wanted to buy the land for large-scale development, however, due to disagreements over the demolition compensation prices. The original residents refused to move, and the matter was put on hold. Now that Jiqiang had obtained this development agreement, he must have used a lot of underhanded means. He had a shady background. To make those people move, he probably resorted to bribery, threats, and even gang-related tactics. I took the agreement and flipped through it casually. I replied, okay. Jiqiang laughed even louder. They say good things come in pairs. Our business is booming now, and it's time to think about family matters. You and Shimeng grew up together. You're just both too shy. I, an old man, have to play matchmaker. Shimeng threw herself into her father's arms and pounded his chest. Dad, what are you talking about? What am I talking about? You have a crush on Pei Xian but are too shy to admit it. Jiqiang rubbed Shimeng's hair and turned to me. Pei Xian, pick a date. Invite your father out. Let's discuss the engagement between our two families, from beginning to end. I didn't say a word. In the business world, such marriages of convenience between well-matched families were all too common. In their eyes, Shimeng and I had grown up together, and our relationship was so good. Wasn't it much better than a loveless marriage for show? I drove home in a daze. I opened the door and lay on the bed. In a trance, I seemed to see Jiang He again. She sat by the bed, touched my eyebrows, and smiled. Ah, Pei Xian, you're getting married. I have to congratulate you. How much should I give as a wedding gift? Afraid that she would disappear, I quickly grabbed her wrist. No, Jiang He, I'm not going to marry her, really. Jiang He had a confused expression. Isn't Shimeng your white moonlight? Didn't you ignore my life and death to make her happy? Pei Xian, the fire was so terrifying, it hurt so much. I sat up suddenly from the bed. I was covered in cold sweat. Jiang He had disappeared. I rubbed my temples. My head was pounding. Was it retribution? I thought with a cold laugh. The media quickly made the news of our joint development of the western suburbs with the He Group the front page story of the recent news. As for my engagement to He Shermang, it was also being widely spread in the tabloids, business, circle marriage, the son of the Pei family and the daughter of the He family, the love story of the second-generation tycoons who are childhood sweethearts. When I saw such headlines, I almost burst out laughing in the office. This must have come from He Jiqiang's own public relations team. It was extremely annoying. He Shermang often came to the company to see me now. I asked my assistant to use the excuse that there was too much work on the development project and I couldn't spare the time to see her, and to stop her outside the office. She would throw a tantrum. I'm going to call my dad and ask him to send more people to help you, then you'll have time to go on a date with me. Surprisingly, thanks to He Shermang's pestering, He Jiqiang really transferred a large number of business backbones and elites from his company. Some of them had been his loyal subordinates for decades. They brought the data on the He Group's development projects, several terabytes of hard drive files, and asked me which ones I could use. Among them, there were records of tax evasion, bribery, forced demolitions, and violence, all kinds of illegal means. He Jiqiang now thought we were in the same boat, so he had no defenses at all. He even called me son-in-law. When we met, I smiled. I can use them, many of them. 2 months later, the Pei Group and the He Group jointly held a press conference on land development in a commercial building in the city center. Both He Jiqiang and I were present. According to He Jiqiang's plan, after announcing the development plan for the western suburbs, he also wanted to take this opportunity to announce the wedding news between He Shermang and me. Before going on stage, he patted my shoulder. He straightened his tie. With a proud smile on his face, son-in-law. I specifically asked someone to check today's almanac. It's a good day, perfect for big events. I stared at him, saying nothing. After the host announced the start of the press conference, everything proceeded as planned, until a tabloid reporter at the bottom, who didn't understand the process well and thought the development project had been explained almost enough, raised his hand and asked, "Mr. Pei, Mr. He, let me ask first, is the marriage between your two families true? Can you disclose the date of the engagement banquet?" He Jiqiang was interrupted halfway through his speech. His expression wasn't good, but since the reporter was asking about a happy event, he answered patiently, "The marriage is true. Pei Xian and my daughter, He Shermang, have known each other since childhood. They fell in love freely. As for when, we'll let you know then. I've never agreed to get married." I took a sip of water, picked up the microphone, and said straightforwardly. This sentence was like a bomb dropped at the press conference. The reporters at the scene were immediately in an uproar. What? Did he change his mind at the last minute? What on earth is going on? This is big news. He Jiqiang didn't react for a moment and stood there dumbfounded. I stood up, took the remote control, and projected all the evidence of He Jiqiang's crimes over the past few years onto the display screen. Tax evasion, violent crimes. How could the Pei Group get involved with a gang-like enterprise like this? He Jiqiang stood up suddenly and poured the tea in his cup over my head. "Pei Xian, you're fucking crazy." I wiped the stains off my face and laughed. "I am crazy, for a criminal enterprise like this. I hope the regulatory authorities in our country will crack down hard and not let it go." He Shermang was sitting in the audience. The spotlight of some media shone on her. She was in tears, covered her face, and ran out. The next day, reports about the He family's involvement in organized crime were almost everywhere. They detailed how He Jiqiang built his fortune and how he had reached his current position. Soon, the public security department stepped in and took He Jiqiang away. In the photo, his hands were handcuffed, and his eyes were filled with resentment and unwillingness. As the saying goes, when the wall falls, everyone gives it a push. The downfall and bankruptcy of the He family were almost inevitable. He Shermang once came to see me, but was stopped by the security guards. She shouted at me from a distance, asking, "Pei Xian, give me a reason, tell me why, have I ever offended you?" I glanced at her and then looked at my own hands. "He Shermang, we deserve to go to hell." She shook her head, as if she didn't understand what I was saying. Later, I heard that the original residents of the western suburbs who had been violently driven away by He Jiqiang came to seek justice one after another after the He family went bankrupt. Many of them rushed into the He family's villa and snatched the valuable things there. He Shermang and her mother hid in the corner, trembling with fear. The conflict escalated. I don't know who started a fire, and the entire villa burned from top to bottom. All the servants of the He family had run away. Who would care about these two fallen bosses? In the end, it was He Shermang's mother who dragged He Shermang out of the villa. Although both of them survived, however, He Shermang inhaled excessive high-temperature gases and thick smoke at the fire scene, resulting in severe craniocerebral injuries and a state of unclear consciousness. Maybe she would recover soon. Or maybe she would never be able to get off the ventilator and become a vegetable for the rest of her life. During the time when the He family was in decline, my father kept calling me, Pei Xian, you've grown so bold now, I can't control you anymore. Do you know what you're doing? How many cooperation projects are there between the He family and our family? Do you understand how much economic loss you've caused? Wasn't Shermang your friend since childhood? You're really heartless. I answered the first few calls, but later, I got tired of hearing it and just ignored them. I often drove alone at night, driving aimlessly on the highway. Sometimes, it seemed as if I could see Jiang He sitting beside me in the passenger seat. She was very well behaved and even fastened her seatbelt. I don't like her. Oh, she drawled the word, and suddenly stared at me. Then who do you like? Do you like me? I smiled and was just about to answer her. Jiang He shook her head again. No, no, you can't like me. If you liked me, how could you have left me alone in that place? Yes. I remembered the towering fire in the basement again. Crazy regret began to consume me. I said, Jiang He, I'm coming to find you. Jiang He tilted her head to look at me. I got off the highway and drove towards that desolate beach in the pitch black night. Along the way, I passed through silent fields and old villages. Jiang He grabbed the seatbelt and let out a soft cry of surprise. This is the sea where you sank. I suddenly stepped on the accelerator, and the car accelerated towards the depths of the sea. Then it plunged into the blue abyss. I unfastened my seatbelt and hugged the illusory Jiang He. I pressed her tightly against me. I've come to see you, and I hope you can forgive me. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.